Welcome to Pink Played.
Here, we don't just watch stories, we step inside them.
Today we're diving deep into Bridgerton, Season 1, Episode 6.
Wish.
Swish! It's such a deceptively simple title for an episode that just completely upends the entire series. Now, before we really get into the heavy analysis, we have to acknowledge the ground rules. If you are listening to this, we are assuming you have seen the episode. We are not holding back on spoilers for Swish, but, and this is important, we are keeping the future under lock and key. We are living strictly in this moment.
In the honeymoon phase.
Or rather, the abrupt and spectacular end of the honeymoon phase.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that.
We will.
Yeah.
But I want to start with the atmosphere, the setting, because up until this point, Bridgerton has felt like a very specific kind of show. It's urban, it's crowded, it's loud, it's London.
Constantly buzzing.
Exactly. But Episode 6, it feels like we've stepped into a completely different genre. I mean, geographically and emotionally, the show just splits right in two.
It's a tale of two worlds. And the creative team makes that bifurcation so stark. On one side, you have the Featheringtons and, the remaining Bridgertons still trapped in the London season.
Right.
And you notice the cinematography there, it's very tight, it's claustrophobic. Every single frame is packed with furniture, with decoration, with people. It is literally a pressure cooker.
That makes perfect sense, because London represents the ton. It represents scrutiny. It's a panopticon where Lady Whistledown is basically the warden watching every single move. You can't breathe without someone noting it in a pamphlet.
You can't. Now, contrast that with where Daphne and Simon are. They arrive at Clivesden Castle, and the frame physically opens up. We get these wide, sweeping shots of the English countryside.
Drone shots, probably.
I would think so. It's green, it's expansive, and it's undeniably idyllic. This is the visual representation of...
Mission accomplished. In a video game, this would be the victory lap. They won. They navigated the false courtship, they secured the engagement, they survived the whole Prince Friedrich drama, and they got married. Clivesden is supposed to be paradise.
But paradise always has a catch. And I think the show uses the sheer scale of Clivesden, which is actually the real-life Castle Howard in York, to highlight a profound sense of isolation.
I never thought of it that way, but you're right. In London, you are never alone. Ever.
And at Clivesden, there is no one else. It's just the two of them.
And, well, a small army of servants who are judging their every move.
The servants are a crucial element, yes. But specifically regarding Daphne and Simon, that isolation removed the need for performance. In London, their entire relationship was a performance. For the Queen, for Anthony, for all the society mothers.
To each other, even.
To an extent, yes. But at Clivesden, behind the closed doors of this massive estate, the performance has to stop. And they have to face the reality of the stranger they just married.
It transitions from a romance to a job. I absolutely loved that sequence where Daphne starts to realize that being a duchess isn't just sitting around eating bonbons and looking pretty.
Oh, not at all.
She is essentially the CEO of a mid-sized agricultural corporation.
She's the sovereign of a mini-kingdom, and she has no idea what she's doing at first.
She has to deal with the villagers, the tenants, the bad hampers, and the pigs. We cannot forget the prize-winning pigs.
That scene is so important for grounding the fantasy. We usually imagine the happily ever after as this static state of bliss. Bridgerton argues that happily ever after involves a lot of administrative work.
So much admin.
And making some very serious decisions about livestock.
And it involves winning over the staff. Mrs. Coulson, the housekeeper, is such a great subtle antagonist here.
She's not a villain?
Not at all. But she represents the old guard. She looks at Daphne, this young city debutante who just swept in, and you can just see her thinking, you have absolutely no idea how to run this place, do you?
And it highlights Daphne's transition. She has to move from being a girl to being a matriarch. She has to earn her authority. So while she is dealing with that sort of low-stakes drama of the hampers and the pigs...
We have to look back at London, where the stakes are life and death, socially speaking.
Absolutely. The London plotline is pure, uncut desperation. And this brings us right back to that title, Swish.
When I first saw it, I thought it was just, a sound effect. But it's doing so much heavy lifting for the themes of this episode.
It really is. It operates on at least two levels. The first is the literal meaning, which we see in that incredibly tense scene with Portia Featherington and Marina Thompson.
Oh, yeah.
Marina's pregnant. The clock is ticking. She is starting to show, or at least she's terrified she is. And Portia is inspecting her dress, pulling the fabric, and she instructs her to swish it.
Swish the skirts! Swish them! It's the sound of a cover-up. It's frantic.
It is the audio cue of deception. It's a silk curtain being waved frantically to hide a biological reality. The entire philosophy is, if you keep the fabric moving, no one can see the truth underneath. And that is the metaphor for the entire Featherington existence right now.
Just keep moving, keep distracting so nobody sees the financial and social ruin that's right underneath the surface.
Precisely. But you mentioned a second meaning.
I did, and that's the thematic meaning, which refers to the pacing of the episode itself. Think about how rapidly the plot moves in this hour. The engagement between Colin Bridgerton and Marina happens in a blink.
It's a swish of events.
It is. It catches absolutely everyone off guard, especially the Bridgertons.
And it really is a ticking clock mechanism. For Marina, the deadline is biological. We've established that. She has to secure a husband before the baby bump becomes undeniable. But for Colin, well, Colin is rushing for a very different reason.
Colin is trying to speedrun adulthood.
Yes, that's the perfect way to put it. He looks at his older brothers, he looks at Simon, he sees them as these established men, and he wants that status. He thinks that by making a sudden grown-up decision, like proposing, he will finally be taken seriously as a man.
Which, ironically, just proves how young and naive he actually is. Impulsive marriage proposals are rarely the sign of a measured, mature mind.
It creates this massive family conflict. So you have the raw desperation in London, and then you have the sort of honeymoon bubble in Cliveden. But even that bubble is fragile. It's about to pop.
And this is why I think episode 6 is the true turning point of the entire season. Structurally, it does something that a lot of period romances just don't do.
In screenwriting theory, we often talk about the midpoint complication. But this is more than that. It's almost a genre pivot. If you look at something like Pride and Prejudice or Emma, the wedding is the finish line. The whole narrative engine is the chase.
Will they or won't they?
Exactly. And once they do, the story is pretty much over. We get a little epilogue, and that's it.
Bridgerton burns through the chase in 5 episodes. It just gets it done.
It creates a narrative vacuum. Episodes 1 through 5 were fundamentally a courtship drama. Episode 6 is a marriage drama. It deconstructs the fairy tale. It poses the question, okay, you got the Duke, you moved into the castle.
Yeah.
Now what? What is it actually like to be married to a man who has a fortress built around his heart?
It shifts the entire focus from getting the guy to knowing the guy. And those are 2 very, very different challenges.
The episode begins with the absolute peak of the romance, that montage we are definitely about to discuss, and it ends with the total, utter destruction of trust between them. It is a perfect, tragic arc contained within 60 minutes.
Well, you teased it, so we have to go there. We have to deep dive into the montage.
Wildest dream sequence.
This was a cultural reset. I remember when this aired, social media essentially melted down for a week. It is 3 minutes of television that really defines the whole female gaze argument for the show.
It's a masterclass in visual storytelling. It does incredible work without a single line of dialogue. We see Daphne and Simon exploring the estate and, well, exploring each other. It establishes their physical connection as their primary language.
That's a great point. They can't talk about the vow, they can't talk about the future, they can't talk about his past, so they communicate through intimacy.
It's the only way they know how. And the music. The Duomo orchestral cover of Taylor Swift's Wildest Dreams. We're going to talk more about the music theory behind that choice later, but just purely as a vibe. It works so incredibly hard.
It perfectly captures that feeling of a honeymoon phase, doesn't it? It's dreamy, it's intense, it feels infinite and slightly dangerous. But we have to talk about the specific visual references in this montage, because the showrunner, Chris Van Dusen, was very, very intentional here.
You mean the rain scene?
I mean the rain scene.
Of course. Simon and Daphne get caught in a downpour. They run for shelter in this little folly, but they get distracted. And there is a specific shot of Simon in a white shirt, completely soaked through, fabric clinging to his chest.
That triggered a sense of déjà vu for about 3 generations of viewers simultaneously.
It is a direct, completely unapologetic homage to Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy in the 1995 BBC Pride and Prejudice.
The lake scene, a cornerstone of the genre.
It's visual shorthand. The show is winking at you. It's telling you, this is your new Darcy. This is the new romantic ideal.
But it subverts it, too. Darcy was repressed. The wet shirt was an accident, a moment of vulnerability he didn't intend.
That's a fantastic distinction. Simon is active. The passion is overt. He's a willing participant in the moment. And that leads us directly to the library scene.
The latter.
The latter.
I feel like we don't even need to describe it. If you've seen the episode, you know. But why the library? I mean, aside from the fact that it's a gorgeous set, what's the symbolism there?
Libraries are traditionally spaces of order. They are about categorization, silence, rules and knowledge. They are intellectual spaces, not physical ones.
Right.
By staging a scene of such wild, uninhibited intimacy on a library ladder, the show is signaling Daphne's liberation.
Mm-hmm.
She is literally and figuratively breaking the rules of her upbringing. She is taking ownership of her pleasure in a space that represents structure and patriarchal knowledge.
It's a rebellion. It's a small, private rebellion against everything she was taught about being a proper lady.
It is. And here is a fun, mind-bending fact about that scene. It was the very first scene that Phoebe Dynevor and Regé-Jean Page ever filmed together.
I still cannot wrap my head around that. How is that possible? You meet your co-star for the first time, you shake hands, and the director says, okay, great to meet you. Now climb this ladder and looks like you're madly in love and having the best honeymoon of all time.
It really speaks to their incredible chemistry and acting ability, but it also brings up the production side of things. Bridgerton was one of the pioneers in the extensive use of intimacy coordinators.
Right, which became much more standard after this.
Absolutely. And Lizzie Talbot, who is the coordinator for the show, she described this specific montage as an intimacy circus.
Intimacy circus is such a vivid phrase. It implies chaos, but like controlled chaos.
It implies acrobatics and choreography.
Yeah.
These scenes are not improvised. They are blocked and choreographed just like a fight scene or a dance. You need to know exactly where your hand goes, not just for safety and consent, which is paramount, but for the camera angle.
So it's technical, not just emotional.
Very technical. And Talbot emphasized that the focus was on the female gaze.
That is a term that gets thrown around a lot in film studies. How does it manifest here, specifically?
You have to watch the camera. It lingers on Simon, but it does so from Daphne's perspective. It focuses on her reactions, her pleasure, her discovery. It isn't just objectifying bodies for the sake of it. It's embedding you, the viewer, in Daphne's subjective experience. It validates female desire in a genre that, historically, often treated women as passive prizes to be won.
Okay, speaking of production challenges, we have to talk about the location. We mentioned Castle Howard earlier. It's a stunning backdrop, but apparently it was a complete nightmare to film in.
A nightmare with some very, very strict rules. The director, Julianne Robinson, she's revealed in interviews that because of the immense historical value of the estate, the crew had a strict no-touch policy.
Which is deeply ironic for what is probably the touchiest episode of the entire season.
Indeed. The crew wasn't allowed to move the furniture. They couldn't lean light stands against the ancient walls. They had to block these incredibly high-passion scenes without anyone accidentally bumping into a priceless 18th century cabinet.
That adds a whole new layer of tension to the acting. Look passionate, be free, but for the love of God, don't scratch the wainscoting.
And it gets even better. Robinson also mentioned that the castle, the grounds, they didn't close to the public during filming.
No, you're kidding.
Not at all. During the scene where Simon and Daphne are, let's call it picnicking, on the lawn, the grounds were open to tourists.
I can just imagine a family from Leeds on a day trip looking for the tea room and stumbling upon the Duke and Duchess of Hastings rolling around in the grass. That is incredible.
The crew had to station production assistants around the perimeter to make sure that people in bright neon anoraks didn't wander into the background of the shot. It must completely break the immersion for the actors, but they sold it. You would never, ever know watching the final cut.
That truly is the magic of movie making. So we've covered the fantasy of Cliveden, the idyllic bubble. Now we have to let the real world crash the party. We have to talk about the engagement announcement.
The garden party scene. This is where the two narrative worlds, the London desperation and the country idyll, collide, structurally speaking, because Daphne and Simon have to come back to reality.
It is a masterclass in awkward, simmering tension. You have Colin standing up, clinking his glass, just totally oblivious to the nuclear bomb he is about to drop on his entire family. I have proposed to Miss Marina Thompson.
And the reaction shots are just brutal. Anthony is immediately furious because he is losing control of the family narrative. Violet is completely blindsided. But the camera makes sure we spend time on Penelope.
Poor Penelope. You can practically hear her heart shattering into a million pieces. It's the moment that, in a way, it radicalizes her. It's a point of no return.
It is the catalyst, absolutely. But I want to focus on Marina for a second, because this episode is where the audience really, really struggled with Marina.
Specifically, that scene later where she confronts Penelope in her room. Marina says something that is just, it cuts right to the bone. She looks at Penelope and says, "Your love is an unrequited fantasy."
It is cruel. There is no denying that. The delivery is cold. But we have to ask the uncomfortable question, is she wrong?
That's the hard part, isn't it? She isn't wrong. Colin does not see Penelope that way at this point. But did she have to say it like that?
And this is where we have to look at it from the survivalist perspective. Marina is not a mustache-twirling villain. She is a woman in a trap, a deadly trap for her time. She is pregnant, unmarried, and facing total social and financial ruin. If she doesn't secure a marriage, her life, as she knows it, is effectively over.
So for her, marriage isn't about love, it's a lifeboat.
It's a cold transaction for safety. She doesn't have the luxury of the Bridgerton romantic worldview, this idea that love conquers all.
Right.
To Penelope, this whole situation is a tragedy of the heart. To Marina, this is a survival horror story. And in that moment, she is trying to shake Penelope awake. She's saying, grow up. The world doesn't care about your crush. The world is a brutal place that cares about survival. It's the collision of romanticism and pure pragmatism.
And that collision of worldviews of fantasy versus reality leads us to the big one, the third key scene, the confrontation.
The controversial scene. And we should label it as such because it sparked a massive, massive amount of discourse online and off.
This is the moment where Daphne finally puts all the pieces together. She has spoken to the housekeeper, she has spoken to her maid, she understands the mechanics of reproduction now in a way she never did before.
She's educated herself.
And she realizes that when Simon said he cannot have children, he didn't mean he was physically unable, that he was infertile.
She realizes it was a linguistic trick,
Yeah.
a cruel one. To Daphne, cannot meant biology. To Simon, cannot meant a choice, a vow he made to his dying abusive father. And in that moment, Daphne realizes her entire marriage, her consent to this union, was predicated on a lie.
So we get to that bedroom scene, and Daphne takes control. She has the knowledge now. She realizes what Simon is doing, his method of withdrawal, and she physically prevents him from doing it. She forces the issue to see if he is, in fact, physically capable of conceiving.
And the aftermath is just explosive.
Yeah.
Simon is horrified. He feels violated. Daphne's furious. And she delivers that line, "You took my future from me."
This scene, more than any other in the season, divided the fan base into two very entrenched camps. And I think it's important we explore both sides, because the show leaves it deliberately messy and morally gray.
It absolutely does. On one side, you have the viewers who focus on the act itself. Let's call this camp bodily autonomy. They argue, quite compellingly, that what Daphne did constitutes sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
Simon explicitly did not consent to the act of insemination. He had a boundary. He was practicing a form of birth control, however archaic. Daphne used her physical positioning and his momentum to override that boundary and violate his consent.
And the core of that argument is, if you reverse the genders, if a man had physically forced a woman to conceive against her stated will, we would not be debating the morality. We would call it a crime, full stop.
And that is a very strong, very valid argument. It's an important lens through which to view the scene. But then you have camp betrayal. This group focuses on the wider context of the marriage. They argue that Simon induced Daphne into this marriage by fraud.
He lied about the one thing, the single most important thing that mattered to her.
In 1813, for a woman of Daphne's station, being a mother wasn't just a goal, it was her primary defined purpose in life, and it was her greatest personal desire. Simon knew this. He knew it was non-negotiable for her, and he let her believe he was biologically broken rather than simply unwilling.
So camp betrayal would argue that his lie vitiated her consent to the marriage itself. She is the victim of a long con, and her act in the bedroom is a desperate, reactive attempt to seize back the truth.
It is a collision of two profound wrongs. And what's fascinating is that the show made a significant change from the book here.
Right.
And that change actually made it more controversial, not less.
Right. In the book, The Duke and I, the scene is darker, but in a different way. Simon is drunk and essentially asleep when the act occurs. Daphne takes advantage of an unconscious man.
Which removes any defense of it being a heat-of-the-moment act. It's premeditated in a much colder way.
So the showrunners clearly wanted to give Daphne more agency. They wanted her to be awake, alert, making an active choice. But by having her be fully conscious and physically overpowering him in the moment, they didn't necessarily solve the moral problem, they just changed the flavor of it.
It makes the characters flawed. It knocks them right off the pedestal of the romantic ideal.
It destroys the archetype. They are no longer the perfect romance novel couple. They are two deeply damaged people hurting each other out of their own trauma. And that shifts the genre definitively from pure romance to complex drama.
And you can't go back from that. The illusion is shattered.
Before we move to the final thematic takeaway from all this, I want to circle back to the music. We mentioned Wildest Dreams, but why does that specific cover work so well? Is it just because we recognize a popular Taylor Swift song?
Well, there is actually a bit of cultural theory we can apply here. It reminds me of the theories of Theodore Adorno regarding the culture industry. It's an academic concept, but Bridgerton applies it in a way he probably never would have anticipated.
Adorno and Taylor Swift. Now, that is a collaboration I did not see coming.
Adorno argued that in modern mass culture, we crave recognition. We derive pleasure not from working hard to understand complex new art, but from recognizing patterns we already know. Bridgerton weaponizes this familiarity.
It's an emotional shortcut.
It's the perfect way to put it. If the show played an obscure 1813 sonata during that montage, your brain would have to do the work to process the emotion. You'd have to interpret the minor key, the tempo, the instrumentation. But when you hear the opening melody of Wildest Dreams, your brain instantly unlocks a pre-existing emotional map.
You know the lyrics, even if they aren't there. You know the song is about intense, fever dream yearning, about a relationship that is beautiful but probably doomed to end. Say you'll remember me.
So you immediately project those modern complex feelings onto the characters in their period costumes. It creates a bridge between 1813 and the present day. It signals to you, the audience. You don't need a history degree to understand this heartbreak. It's the same kind of heartbreak you felt.
It makes the period piece accessible. It's recognition as pleasure. You feel clever for getting the reference, and you feel the emotion more immediately.
And that aesthetic choice matches the costume evolution in the episode as well. Have you noticed the significant color shift for Daphne?
Oh, absolutely. Ellen Mirojnick, the costume designer, is a genius. In London, Daphne was always Bridgerton blue. Everything was pastel, innocent, baby blue, powder blue.
But here in Cliveden, that blue fades. It becomes dusky, as Mirojnick called it. We see her in these muted lilacs, in platinum grays, in much cooler, icier tones.
It reflects her new maturity and her status as a duchess, but it also reflects the cooling temperature of the marriage, doesn't it? It gets colder as the episode goes on.
It's the visual language of being in that bubble. She is fading into the mist of the estate, becoming part of the cold stone of the castle. Now contrast that with the Featheringtons back in London. They're still wearing those acid citrus colors.
Blinding lime green, bright orange, garish yellows.
They are screaming for attention because they're desperate to be seen to secure their place. Daphne, on the other hand, is disappearing because she is isolated. The costumes are telling the exact same tale of two worlds that the script and the cinematography are.
It's just total cohesion and storytelling. Every department is on the same page.
It's remarkable, really.
So we have the shattered illusion, the controversial confrontation, the desperate swishing of skirts in London. What is the big overarching question this episode leaves us wrestling with?
I think the episode poses a fundamental and very adult question about relationships.
Yeah.
Can trust ever be rebuilt after the foundation is revealed to be a lie?
And that question becomes the narrative engine for the rest of the season.
It does, because Simon believes that love should be enough. He thinks, I am here, I love you, I am your husband, isn't that sufficient? And Daphne's perspective is that love requires shared truth and shared dreams. They are at a total impasse, philosophically and emotionally.
The romance is dead, the relationship, the hard, messy, difficult work of it has just begun.
And that is a much, much harder story to tell than a simple courtship.
But a much more interesting one.
Absolutely, no question.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the swirling, swishing, and frankly scandalous world of Episode 6.
A lot of silk and a lot of secrets.
Thanks for listening to Pink Blade.
If this episode revealed something new, you can follow to explore the next chapter.
And if a moment stayed with you, share it in the comments.
Until next time.
This is Pink Blade.